Telling a story isn't about perfection. It's about communication. It's about our shared moments together. Hi, my name is Jeff Price, and I would like to welcome you to Intentional Musicianship, where we look at everything that goes on at center stage and the preparation behind the scenes needed to transform your performance into an unforgettable experience. I am here to encourage you, support you, and generally have a great time being united together with you through music. After a wonderful performing career as a storytelling musician around the globe, my joy is found in empowering musicians to find the freedom to go beyond the music stand and the fourth wall of the concert stage to better engage with their audience members. This podcast isn't a classroom, it's a brainstorming session, and it is meant for musical performers of all ages. Together, we'll explore performance practice, stagecraft, the nuances of storytelling, and the strategies for genuine audience engagement. We're here to discover what truly makes a live performance resonate. Okay, for today's episode, we're going to talk about something you may or may not have heard about called a pre-mortem analysis. Now, you might understand what a post-mortem analysis is because after someone passes away, you might have to go to the coroner to see what made the patient pass away. But a pre-mortem analysis for a musician can be very helpful because this is how you can plan a more effective way to go about presenting your music, because you're going to look at all of the ways in which your performance could fail. And so this proactive approach helps musicians prepare for a variety of worst case scenarios. And so hopefully this is going to help you overcome some stigmas and fears and anxiety a little bit to hopefully then enhance your performance quality and that you can have a little bit more confidence on stage. And so the first thing as you get around to doing your pre-mortem analysis is you want to sort of identify the potential issues. And so if you had a notepad or a pen, or if you got into a room with some of your friends, you might go over your biggest fears or things that you're concerned of for a performance. And things you might consider as you go through are just fundamentals that could go wrong and technical things that could go wrong. How your articulation and phrasing might not come out to an audience. Maybe your dynamics or expressiveness might not be communicated well. Maybe you have a fear of just how you look on stage. And so you might troubleshoot all the ways in which you might not communicate well with others because you just might look like a frozen popsicle on stage. Maybe you're just not a great speaker and you might think of those flubs and things that you could say that wouldn't go over as well. And maybe you're just worried about what you're wearing and maybe you have to think about what's the worst case that could happen about that. And maybe you're looking at, well, I'm really concerned because it'll be the first time I'm playing this performance in public by memory. And so maybe you're just scared about your concentration level and things that go on with that. And so with all of these kind of things, you're already starting to get a picture of what could go wrong. And so now the next step is, when you're thinking through this is, well, first, you could probably think to yourself, well, the good news is this probably won't be a unique event. Someone has gone through this same thing. But you're going to take all of these things you've troubleshooted and thought about what could go wrong, and now you're going to think a new path to maybe improve it, minimize the impact. And so you can walk through various things that could happen and find that way to be better. An example, if you happen to have a phobia or maybe a little bit of anxiety of if your reed is going to speak and maybe you start and you get a big gurgle in your sound, what are you going to do? Well, calmly, because we're not at the performance, you might think to yourself, well, how can I get around that? Well, I might have to just swab out between movements. I might have to let the audience know between movements, I'm going to swab out. And it's just going to take a second. It's just a normal part of life. The condensation gets on the keys. And I want to make sure that in the middle of the pieces, I don't have a moment. But even if it happens, you might be able to bring it up later on. And maybe you might say, well, those kind of things happen. Recently, I went to a performance, and within the first 5 seconds, there was a huge gurgle in the throat tones of the clarinet. It caused the clarinet player to have to try to blow it out. It didn't work. She calmly stopped, fixed her instrument, and told the audience, I'd like to try that again, because I think you're going to enjoy it a little bit better without the gurgle sound. And so as you're working through things, it almost humanizes these mistakes that becomes larger than life and you're not sure what to do. I remember many years ago playing on stage down at the University of Georgia in Athens, and my friend Judith was singing. And it was one of those scenes in a movie where the band or the orchestra would play the opening and then it would be her intro. She couldn't find the pitch. Just life had happened. The way the sonic event was there, she just couldn't get it. And so all she did was talk to the audience. And she said, hello, audience. I'm just not hearing the start of where my pitch should be to start that. So I'd like to do that again. And, she added if you'll indulge me. Of course, the audience would indulge her, but, it wasn't the end of the world. Now, I'm sure she was mortified on the inside, but thinking through that and saying, well, what would I do? Maybe helps. And it calms you down. So when something does happen, you can be more adaptable and you can be more flexible. And so when we're going through this and we've looked at some of these brainstorms, I think some of the things then you're going to end up doing is write all these lists of issues, and then you're going to make it personal to yourself and past experiences and past things you've seen, because you don't have to create these solutions by yourself. There's enough viral videos of someone doing something. An example, if you happen to be a string player and you're playing a solo on stage with an orchestra, and all of a sudden the bow goes awry and you lose the hair, I love that those string players can adapt quickly and calmly go back to the next row and grab the bow from the violinist, and then they just sort of pass it up. It's like part of like routine. It's troubleshooting 101 for a string player if this happens. But if you've never done it before, oh my goodness, it's really hard to adapt. Sometimes you might find in that list of problems, they're really not that big of a deal at all. So as you go through this, I want to make sure that when you're going through all those technical and environmental, unpredictable things on stage, that you go through the entire performance. Because as you look at the pre-performance, the beginning, the middle, the end, and the post-performance, there are different things that happen that sometimes with our anxiety and sometimes with how we react to things might set us off a little bit more. And so, for example, if you get to the performance hall and the doors happen to be locked and you have a very stringent routine for pre-concert preparation, how you adapt and modify to something like that could be setting you up for success for the rest of the event. So if you think through that and you have the emergency contacts, or if you have the key already there that you have access to the hall at any given time, you're not beholden on the stage manager, the stage staff to let you in. Whatever it happens to be, you might be able to troubleshoot it. Maybe you need something particular in your green room, or you get to the green room and it's too cold. You got to maybe figure out how you might have to adapt to those kind of things. Maybe that pre-preparation area, maybe the lighting's just not great and you wanted to do something, but there was something going on prior to your performance. This is particular like in an audition setting or a big concert where you're just part of a larger show. And so you might have to think through, before I play, I have to remind myself 17 people are on this show. This is a showcase and everybody's trying to do this. That means I'm going to have this particular dressing room. And that means I have to warm up before the show to be effective at the time that I'm supposed to be there, because at that particular place, I can't do my normal things. And then as you walk onto the stage, you get used to the lights and you have to figure out, well, the stage is colder than I'm used to. It's hotter than I'm used to. How do I adapt? How am I going to stay in tune? I can't see the audience. Maybe it's so bright that I have to squint. Am I going to have to practice trying to stare into the lights? That's one of the things I've had to do over the years as a musician, is you fake it till you make it and you try to get used to that lighting system. And that's something you can't replicate. And so there are a lot of those pre-mortem frameworks at the middle and the end. And you're going, well, what happens if someone comes in during the middle of this particular movement of a piece during this emotional section? How am I going to handle it? Well, it's going to be life and you're going to have to move on. It's not one of those things you're going to be able to control. And so in this pre-mortem, as you're looking through the whole part of this pre-mortem, you're going to try to figure out what you can control and what things are beyond your control. You can't control. I was just at a concert the other night. At the end of the movement that was really slow, it sounded like the completion of the piece. People clap. And in this case, it was awesome because this little kid started clapping like it was the end of the piece. It was incredible. The only thing you can do is just enjoy the moment, take a pause, say thank you to the audience, and move on. But if you've not gone through those things, when those things happen in the performance, they can really mess with you a little bit. So as you have this pre-performance beginning, you can draw a simple timeline and maybe a series of boxes on a piece of paper. I like to get down in the weeds. It's almost like you're storyboarding the show again, but you're storyboarding the show with problems and solutions of what you're going to do. I love something as simple. What happens if you get to the show and you forgot your black socks? Well, black gaffer's tape is amazing. I've seen through the history of time that you can solve a lot of problems with black gaffer's tape. A rip on a piece of clothing, if it's black, you can get away with a lot of stuff with black gaffer's tape. Sometimes you might just have to put in a repair kit of some kind for your instrument or your clothes that you sort of keep with you for your performance kit as part of your pre-mortem analysis of what could go wrong so that you can adapt well to these kind of things. So as you visualize and plot these issues on this little timeline, you might want to have an icon or a symbol to say if this is a big deal, a little deal, a no deal. How are you going to deal with it? Could be a stuck key where you just quickly on the side, pop it out. You have that little gurgle. You just got to push through until you can get to the right kind of break. And then oftentimes you'll have people go and they'll blow it out. And the things that you don't want to do is react in a way to give that nervous face. So you can say, when this happens, you must control your reaction to whatever is happening. And the cool thing about this is you're brainstorming the solutions. You're developing these contingency plans for what's happening. In business, this pre-mortem is meant for a lot of project development and the demise of a project. And so when you're taking it over to music, you're really thinking about the demise of your performance and you're going through all the non-communicative steps of how your audience will just get up and walk out And even thinking that, you go, yeah, they're just not going to do that. The audience is really tolerant. They're there to see you and to be there to encourage you. And so as you go through these things and you document these solutions that now you can practice, you're going to get better and better and better, and you're going to get more comfortable on the stage. And so once you discover a solution, then you're going to nest it back into the big show. You're going to see if it works. And hopefully, as it nests back in, it might then create alternate paths for even better solutions and scenarios. And it might mark something that maybe you're never going to mess up that particular phrase again, because it was an aha moment that you realized that all you had to do was have better balance by placing your feet at the right spacing, which allowed you to breathe. And then you looked at the audience, which then impacted your playing in a great way that then you could play the entire phrase. It could be something that the solution was to mark on your part to have a line go through the phrase over a particular phrase that you find yourself not being able to breathe through. You're just, all these things you think of fundamentally in the practice room, but then sometimes you have to think about what's going to happen on stage. That's why you have some of that notation and things you do in the practice room. I think the important part as you're imagining this is you truly walking through the program and taking time to do that. Oftentimes we minimize the technical rehearsal part of things, but in this case, we're doing a technical rehearsal in our mind and we're going through what's supposed to happen and what could happen that maybe goes awry. And so we have to imagine going through this entire performance, encountering the issue. And this is where you sort of get to be your superhero self, your great, awesome musician that you are, and you get to implement this solution. Sometimes the audience will be engaged with the solution, and sometimes they'll never even know that anything happened. And it's good as you're going through this, as you get sort of set up with this, is to get some feedback to say, hey, I've gone through my little storyboard of problems and things that might go on in this show. You might share it with Susie. You might share it with Bob and get some feedback. And maybe because of their experience, they might say, oh, I remember when that happened. Hey, it was 20 degrees. It's flat. You're a flute player. You're not going to be able to get it up to pitch. So you're just going to have to wing it. Don't stress over that. That's going to be a little deal issue. Folks are going to be with you, and you're just going to push air through, and you're going to be good to go at the end. So as you continue on this, you're going to maybe practice and internalize what you've been doing in these practice sessions to get better. And you're going to refer to this pre-mortem and sort of simulate dealing with these issues in your practice session. So for example, one big thing that we don't do well that sometimes can catch us off guard is that walk on, that entrance to the stage and placing our music down and bowing. And so you're maybe going through that. What happens if the crowd is clapping? What happens if the crowd doesn't stop clapping? What happens if the crowd doesn't clap? And so you're thinking up the solutions in your head of how to address that, and you're putting it in your practice so that you can effectively practice those scenarios. And so you're rehearsing with the storyboard, you're rehearsing in your rehearsal, and you have that mental upkeep that you're sort of going on. And as you gain experience as a performer, the great thing is that you're going to get better and better because you're going to have more of a palette of tools and experiences. And you're going to go, I remember when I was delayed to be on stage, and it was because there was a power outage and they were resetting things. Well, I was sort of nervous off stage, but I realized that what I had to do to solve this problem was maybe just go out to the audience and let them know it was happening. And we had a nice laugh about it. And then when the power was up, we continued. So to conclude, we just want to make sure that this plan is not immutable because the performance is live and you're not a robot. Life happens. You're practicing and preparing for a lot of things, but you're just not sure if Godzilla is going to show up at your concert. So you want to be dynamic in how you approach your performance and understand that this one live performance is going to be different than a performance an hour, 2 hours, 2 days later. And so as you gain more experience and encounter new issues, you can put them on this storyboard that you've started to create and started to practice so that you can be better and more effective as a performer. So as we conclude with this pre-mortem, I just encourage you to stay flexible, brainstorm some different possibilities. And remember, we've all gone through a lot of different things. And at any given time, reach out to your colleagues, your friends, or come to my website at intentionalmusicianship.com, and we can talk about some issues that might be able to help you perform better and get through some of these items with a pre-mortem analysis. That's it for today's episode. We hope that some of the topics and issues addressed today will be useful to you as you move forward in your musical journey. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for joining us today. We know your time is precious, and we really appreciate that you have taken the time to listen to us today. Consequently, we'd like to hear from each and every one of you. You can reach out and connect with us at intentionalmusicianship.com. My hope is that we build a community where we can encourage one another through our mutual experiences performing live music. I look forward to connecting with each of you again on the next episode of Intentional Musicianship.